So when we talk about disaster recovery strategies, I think some basic ones here we wanted to put out there today is just kind of get some ideas about where your company may be with it. And this is what you can communicate back to your group with it too, to ask them questions. So are you using somebody that's going to specialize in DR services? Or are you going to go out, have one of your own sites operated by your own group, and you're going to run your DR site that way? Do you have a mutual agreement with some other party? Maybe you're an agency or a city and you're sharing. I've seen financial institutions try to share facilities. I've seen state, local government folks try to share facilities too. How is it, from a very strategic perspective, that DR location, how's that going to happen? And what's our strategy with it? There are challenges, there's pros and cons about all of these. But what is our strategy as we move forward? Very key to understand, get that figured out, brush out some of the details about some of the capabilities of all of these. Okay? Is our site going to be cold, warm, or hot? Very simple here. A cold site is you're hitting that location, whatever that DR location is, and you're kind of bringing everything with you. And you're going to recover it onto the systems now. Nothing's live, nothing's active. You're starting pretty much out with the tape and with some servers and with some networking gear trying to load it. Cold site, maybe you do have a plan, but the hardware, software, you're bringing it with you. Okay. Warm site is maybe you've got some of that stuff there. Some of the servers are active. Maybe you've got some operations that are syncing up with your operational site like DNS or Active Directory or some of those things. But you still have to load the data somehow onto a system and bring that system up. It could be loading from a disk. It could be loading from tape. It could even be loading from replicated data. Okay? But generally speaking, too, is that on cold and warm, they're really not connected with any type of dedicated connections. And it's going to take you a little bit of time to bring them up. Hot site is things are definitely more active. You could be replicating more. You could be backing up more. It's connected to your network all the time. You could see the systems. You know if they're online, offline. You know if the data is getting over there or not. You know that you could actually monitor those systems to make sure that they're alive and those processes to make sure that they're alive and everything is working. You may even be to a point that it's mirrored. That's kind of between your warm and hot. Maybe it's mirrored. Is it active data or is it active passive data? Okay. So what's our strategy? Because this is going to depend on your RTO time. It's going to depend on money. It's going to depend on how fast the business needs to have the systems up and how old is the data once we land there. Okay, next please. So think of those as your strategy. Some things here that we put up on site, RTO time, RPO time. Of course, as you kind of move up from left to right here from a cold site, from tapes, all the way up to hot sites where things are being replicated, you're going to have, it's going to cost more, but you're going to have data. You're going to have a less chance to have data, and your RTO time that those systems coming up is going to be quicker. Very simple. Put this up on executive board. Kind of where do you want to land? How much do you want to spend here? Next, please. As we kind of go through some of the challenges, this is definitely, and specifically around backups, you will hear a lot of things around tape versus disk. Here's some ideas on the advantages of like disk. I'm not saying tape goes away. I like the idea of going to disk and then maybe storing things longer off of tape. It depends on how much it is and how feasible that's going to be with it. Also have a lot of customers that just do nothing but disk. Okay? When you get into tape, these are some of the challenges that as we get into tape. Yes, there's data on the tape. One of the things that's critical on, if you look at the first, second, the third column there, is this idea of encryption, even on the right on disk advantage. Is information encrypted? Is it encrypted on the tape? Is it encrypted in transport? Is it encrypted at risk? That encryption thing is going to be big for everyone if they have a security breach. So there's these ideas. If you're in California, it's called SB 1386, and I think the federal government are pushing more of these things out too. It's the idea that you've got to report a breach. A little caveat in there is that if it's encrypted, you don't have to worry. You don't have to report it. You have to, as a business practice, identify where the breach came from, and you may have to bring in law enforcement to help you with that. But the idea that you've got to now go out and report to all of your customers, change all of their cards, or whatever the case is, I now have a bit of a get-out-of-jail card because it was encrypted. So on both sides, think about encryption. On the tape side, just remember as I go through taking the tapes, putting them off-site, having them stored, and then I got to go back to that warehouse, bring them onto wherever my DR site is, and get them restored again. That all takes time. On the tapes to the truck piece during the transport, I've seen people where they're doing nightly backups, but the truck only comes once every week. Is that okay? Because technically, depending on what your risk is, you have an RPO time of 7 days. If that building burns down, you could lose all of your tapes. So this is very just kind of go through these steps if you're in that tape mode now and figure out some advantages to go to disk or maybe even to go to like replication. And still potential to use both of them. Next please. A very basic flow for some of the backup services here with CoreLink is the idea that two things. Not everything's got to be in a CoreLink data center. You could have data that's backed up on a vault locally at your site and then a copy into the CoreLink data center. You could have an existing CoreLink data center and copy from your existing one to a secondary CoreLink data center vault. Okay, so depending on your environment and how you're, how you're looking to engage with like a company, you could have these type of capabilities. You could have it being onto disk, and once again, this says backup. You could do replication pretty much the same way. How am I going to get the data locally? If there's a local server that fails, then it's just one. I like the local vault thought. And then if something happens to my local site, where am I going to go? Am I going to go to one of the secondary sites, or am I going to go to CoreLink? At CoreLink, we've got servers there. We've got networking gear there. We've got capabilities, disk, SANs, those type of things to bring your systems back up to. That is an advantage to use a service doing it yourself. You've got to get all the stuff. As compared to a service, we've got those capabilities there for you. Okay, and we'll sit there and help you monitor how this data is going from your servers to the local vaults to potentially some secondary vault. We'll alert if there are problems. We'll help you fix if there are issues. And we have services too that if you want them, we'll help you do the recovery, or we'll do the recovery at your DR site if there is a disaster for a service level agreement. So here are just some basic flows around backup, but it's pretty dynamic. And once again, once you get it onto disk or off that tape, you can move this around. Next, please.